So, are we allowed to think aloud here?
Yes.
Yes, you're allowed to think as aloud as you can.
Right.
There's Christianity is interesting for sure. They just. I think about when they would go on, like when they would try to go to Jerusalem on their
Crusades?
Yeah, on their crusades.
Right.
I mean, they were just destroying places.
Yeah.
Who thinks that's godly? Just destroying places, taking all the wealth, taking all like the artifacts. I mean, it's a different time period, of course, but
I'll defend Christianity here a little bit too, because I think it goes both ways. That's why when people look at terrorists and they blame all of Islam for terrorism, well, the Crusades was really economic.
It was pretty. I mean, like most people who were taking part in it was pretty radical. Not everyone was just going out there and doing that.
Yeah, there was literally messages between the Pope and the kings at the time, and they would tell each other, "Listen, hey, we need to go get that port in Jerusalem because then we can get, direct access to Asian, imports."
To the markets, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were like, "What are we gonna do? We're gonna have to tell them this is for God, and we need to get the Holy Land back." So they used religion as an excuse for economic benefit.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the same thing with ISIS. If you look at ISIS, for example, ISIS made up to $5 million a day at their height. They were gaining land. They were gaining resources. They were gaining money. They weren't doing it for religion. They were killing Muslims, and they were trying to attack mosques.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those radical groups like to use religion as like a scapegoat and like a reason of why they're doing these things. But I mean, you definitely as an outsider have to do your own research, look into it, and just kind of like question in your heart, like, do I think these people are, like they're bad because they're Muslim and that's why they're doing this? No, these people are just bad people who've been grown up in a weird place, weird to me at least, I'm not from there, and like they have some weird circumstances going on, and they're just, this is what they think is right. But like at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that everyone who's Muslim, is part of ISIS. That's just a terrible misconception that someone could have. What you're saying, like your sister, these people have no idea what Islam is. Those are the people I think who are like looking at that stuff and they're like, holy moly, like these people are.
They need to be gone. They need to be eradicated. Yeah.
Like you see someone with like a hijab on and you're like, that person's a terrorist.
Yeah.
And like that's like where it gets like pretty messed up, because I mean, if you're ignorant to all of these things, then it's like that's where a lot of problems arouse and a lot of hate comes out. And
that's where a lot of atheism originates from, right? Is that they look at religion and they're like, oh, religion's the reason for all our problems. Religion's what causes violence.
I don't disagree with part of that.
Really?
I think that religion has probably been one of the main sources of war during the entire span of the war.
Well, I think that religion is not the source of it. I think that we need to distinguish between what actually is religion and what is human nature, right? I am of the opinion that man was made evil, right? Man is made self-interested. And religion teaches you to be spiritual and to forego those worldly desires. And because religion has been manipulated and used for power, for killing, for wars, doesn't mean that religion in and of itself is corrupted in that nature.
I think it's also like, if you look at it, when people don't turn to religion, they turn to other things like veganism, vegetarianism. People who are going to be radical in one way and another, they're going to find a group and become radical within that group. Like
for sure. And I mean, like, I'll go back to the statement that I made. Religion has been a source, might not be the correct term. It's been just, once we have all of these different groups, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, like they clash in certain ways, and you have radical people who then just want to decimate the other ones. It's not the whole group itself, and like I want to make that clear that that's not how I truly see it. Like these groups clash, and the radicals within the groups just that's where our wars come from.
I'll tell you this, my history teacher always said this, and I think it's really true, where there's not a single war in history that you can point out to me that I won't find you the origin being economic and monetary. It's always money. It's always money. And at the end of the day, if after money, it's tribalistic. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of tribalistic for sure.
It's tribal mentality.
And I agree, you know,
yeah.
money and economic standpoint is definitely probably the root, like one of the major roots. Religion's kind of put on in the after effect of like kind of being able to explain part of it in a way.
Religion motivates.
Yeah, it's a motivation.
Like you can ask Russia. Russia knows how well religion motivates because Russia had, under communist rule, like you see in China, they don't like religion. But then when Russia banned religion and then they lost badly in World War I and they realized that their soldiers were demoralized, they brought back religion so quickly because when the KGB and all these kind of intel groups looked into why were their soldiers so demoralized, they found that religion plays a big role in as to whether someone's willing to die or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're at peace with the world and with your God, I think you can die a whole lot quicker than if you're just not at peace. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Something that I'll probably struggle with if I don't find anything. But I think people in war, absolutely, it is a feeding ground for faith.
Yeah, that's a sense of security for me because I know a lot of atheists and agnostic friends. It's like I worry for them because when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to be questioning my belief system. I'm going to be firm in my faith that I'm about to meet my Creator, and it's hard for those people who don't have that belief system and they're on their deathbed and they're wondering, did I live my life in a lie? And I don't think that people of faith necessarily question that in their final moments. It's like I saw something on social media. It was pretty funny. Like people when they skid their car, they're like atheists. They like God re-enters their spirit, and they're like for a second they pray like, oh let me not go to hell. But
sure, that
definitely happens.
I mean, I don't ask myself. I mean, I think in my own heart, you know, if there is a God, maybe he'll be okay with me not maybe 100% believing. But I think I'm a good person. I think I make good decisions. I try to be as helpful as possible, especially nice and caring to other people. And I think those are all morals that have probably been taken away from either the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. I mean, those are things you can find in there, you know, being a good person. But it is definitely different coming from my side of it. Like you said, like you're not going to question. There's definitely going to be a little questioning on my part. And I think for you to say that you'll be 100%,
a little bit disingenuous, you think?
Yeah. I think I mean, like I'm not saying you're going to be sitting there and you're like all of a sudden going to be debating like in your head, but I think everyone's definitely got a little bit of fear in them in that sense. You know, when that day comes, you never know.
I mean, yeah, doubt is normal, but I think that
you'll be at peace with yourself.
Yeah, I'll be at peace. I won't regret not putting myself into my faith. But that also brings up another question. If you don't subscribe to any sort of religious ideology, where do you think your morals come from? Are they like innate? You feel like you have this objective sense of justice that like you were born with, or do you think that that's societal?
Search up real quick religion's effect on moral boost or like morality boost in religion and war.
Well, this is what it says right here. It says that they interview people in 71 villages. They were 12% more likely to turn to religion in Sierra Leone, 14% Uganda, and 41% in Tajikistan. So the greater the effect of war, the more likely they were to turn towards religion.
So the greater the effect of war,
I mean, I
the
think
more likely they were to turn towards religion.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense.
I mean, that makes sense.
For sure, because I think, like, when you go through war, I mean, you see all these terrible things happening around you, and then, like, you'll see someone that, like, you know, like, it just, like, is like a blessing in a sense. And it's, like, I think in that moment, like I was saying before, you know, maybe there's those moments that kind of, like, you're like, all right, you know, something's going on here. I'm not saying that's what all these people are thinking, but I think when you're around like really terrible situations and then somehow you make it out of it, that's when people who like might be questioning things kind of get onto the path of like, all right, I think there might be something up there.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really good point, like the question you just asked them. But before we go there, because that's a pretty deep question, I'll let you think about that for a second. But before we go there, what is it when you look at science, when you look at physics, when you look at all this kind of stuff? Why are you still like, I don't think really God still exists? Or what would make you not think God exists based off of like the elements of all around you?
Well, I mean that's difficult question, but I think about it and I sit here. The Big Bang definitely is an interesting thought, but it doesn't disprove God. And I've thought about that a lot because, why did this Big Bang happen? You
Right.
know, like,
Yeah, if I can add some scientific context, I'll just say that we know that the Big Bang occurred because Edwin Hubble realized that the galaxies were moving away from us, right? And he found that when, in the Doppler shifting, the frequencies become wider, right? As things move away from us, and when galaxies move away from us, they emit a red light emission spectrum, meaning that, and then you can determine how fast they're moving away from us. And so, if you can determine how fast they're moving away from us, he called it Hubble's constant. And if all the galaxies are moving away from us, that means that the universe is expanding, right? And if the universe is expanding, we can divide Hubble's constant, which is the acceleration of the universe, divided by the distance of the galaxy, to see when the universe was in that initial atom. Because if it's expanding, there had to be a point where it was in that. It's called the initial singularity. And so, before that, science thought that we were in a static model, essentially meaning that the universe has always existed and it forever will exist. But that's totally inconsistent with religion, because if there's a creator, and so so for everything that there is, right, there has to be a cause, and so that's fundamentally consistent with the essence of what a God is. But if you think about it, right, where did that initial atom come from? And religion says it's a creator, it's a supreme being. But scientists, it's a plausibility that universe could have, that initial atom could have came from another universe. But that has no explanatory value. And if you think it from a scientific and philosophical perspective, right, if you use Occam's razor, right, it's basically the theory that has, the simplest theory that has the most explanatory value is a theory that you should use. So a theory like, that this life is a simulation doesn't have any explanatory value because it doesn't give you the root cause of that existence. And
do you believe in the multiverse?
That's exactly where I was going with it. If that initial atom was from another universe, from another universe, that's infinite, and it doesn't have as much. It's more complex because you don't have the
definitive, root cause. But does that complexity kind of push you away from that, though?
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you shouldn't believe that might be the case?
Well,
I lean towards, before you answer, that there is a multiverse. Like I really like that theory. I've looked into string theory a lot, and
it's hard not to think about it and think it might be real.
Yeah, because if the universe is expanding, like, where's it expanding into? Like, where's it going?
I mean, there's a lot of questions
Where
we
is
have.
it? And
I wish we had the answers, too.
Yeah.
Because it would make life a whole lot easier.
And a part of the Big Bang Theory, right, is that when it comes to Big Bang Theory and when it comes to the universe is expanding, that means that there's either two options for the universe. It's either going to collapse on itself, which is the dominant narrative within scientists, or that it will expand all the way to where it will just die out and fizzle out. And Islamic theology, the Quran says that it will collapse on itself, so it actually agrees with the dominant narrative. But did you pull up something? No, you didn't pull up something else for us. But keep going with what you were saying.
But I was going to say, the multiverse is entirely plausible, but it doesn't have any explanatory value, and it's also more complex than simply saying that there's a creator. And so it would be philosophically inconsistent to say it makes more sense
a definitive
than
answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is why I brought this guy on. He came out here with some facts.
Yeah.
Or at least some good talking points.
Even though we can't prove that there's a creator, it's more that theory holds more. It's more simple because you
Is
can
that
understand
easier to like hold on to in your your mind?
because it has more explanatory value. If I say it's a multiverse, but where did that multiverse come from? It's infinite, and so I can't trace it to anything.
See, and I think
it's a dead end.
You just definitely brought like a thought out of my head that's definitely been there for a long time, and it's more like religion in my head kind of gives people answers, in a sense, things that are hard to think about, death, where we came from. It gives you answers in a sense. They're not definite answers, they're there, but for me, I've never been one to just think that like everything's this simple. So if it's this simple, I mean, it's not simple at all, like religion, God, that's not simple. But I don't necessarily think that it would be that simple.
What would be that simple?
Just that there was a creator and we've been created like that, and that was the Big Bang. You know, I have a hard time sitting here thinking that that's how it happened.
Well, nothing about that is simple. Like nothing
Well,
about
it's not simple, but that's an answer. Like it's hard for me, for I think a lot of people, you know, having an answer like that helps a lot of people go with their day. You know, like get through their day, like, you know, they have an answer. But I think not knowing things has definitely always been an issue in society. I mean, all the way back to when religion was beginning, you know. Religion, I think, in a lot of times was kind of to explain to people what was going on. It was a means of communicating, getting answers out, getting knowledge out to people. And it always has been.
I hear that a lot, and it's kind of like, and that's a really, what else? I mean, you're when I think about life, a lot of the times, I think about it as one day you wake up in a ballroom, and everyone's dancing, and everyone's singing, and everyone's drinking and eating, and you're like, all right, cool, and someone hands you a plate of cake and apple juice, and he's like, go ahead, have fun, drink, eat, and you're like, cool. How did I end up here? They're like, don't worry about it, just have a good time. And you're just sitting there like, okay, cool, I'll eat, I'll drink, I'll dance a little bit, but like I'll sit back down at my designated table and like ask again, how did I end up in this ballroom? Who are you people? How did I end up here? That's kind of like, that's a huge question to ask, especially when you wake up in a massive ballroom, right, called this life. And you just have no idea how you ended up here. You have no idea why someone suddenly is handing you food and drinks and telling you to have fun. And you're like, how did I end up here? Who brought me here? Who brought you guys here? Who are you people? Why are you my family? Why are you my friends? What is happening? These are huge questions. They're not just helping you get through your day or helping you give you a meaning to life. It is what is life.
Well, yeah, for sure. But like that kind of just went with what I was saying, you know, like, you know, who knows though? You know, like people, we like if we could bring someone back from the dead, you know, in a sense, and like, you know, talk to them and be like, what happened on the other side? Like, did you go somewhere and was this real? Mm-hmm. Like that would definitely, you know, help a lot of people out.
That would ruin the whole point though,
I mean,
right?
yeah,
that would ruin the whole point, but that's
and I'll tell you something, bro. If that person came back and if he told us, no one would believe him.
Oh, for sure.
For
sure. But that doesn't mean that person's not telling the truth.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly isn't that the same case for Jesus and Muhammad and Moses?
That's damn true, but I think a lot more people are believing than they're not believing.
Okay.
I don't know about that, but I think the reason Mal says, of course it's not easy, is because if Islam or any religion had all the answers, then we would all be practicing, right? It leaves open to interpretation, like what is afterlife? Obviously, the Quran has its own version, but it leaves so many questions unanswered, and that leaves us room to ponder. It's like, I think that when we die, we will just enter into a different dimension, and then there might be more dimensions beyond that, right? Right now, we are living in a third dimension, right? But technically, we can only see two dimensions, right? If I look at this thing, I can only see the flat plane that I see. The only reason I perceive depth is because of light. If I was truly looking at in the third dimension, I would be able to see every aspect of this notebook. I would be able to see the back of it, the side of it, all at once when you're perceiving it that.
No, but you're seeing 3 dimensions when you're looking at that notebook.
No, what you're actually seeing is you're seeing a plane. And the reason you see the sides of it is because you're perceiving light.
Yeah, that's a third dimension. Okay, the reason to it is what it is, but that's still the third dimension. Right?
Yeah, I can't say what you're saying is true or not.
That's
Can we look
depth
that up?
times length times width right there. That's 3. And then
you're not perceiving all the dimensions at once.
No, you are. I'm literally looking at all of them right now.
Right.
Your eyes can only use 2 dimensions.
Oh. Living in well, hold on. Okay, yeah.
Again, this is why I brought him on.
Because when you look at it...
So hold on, let me read it for you. We are 3D creatures living in a 3D world, but our eyes can show us only 2 dimensions. The depth that we all think we can see is merely a trick that our brains have learned. A byproduct of evolution. Okay.
Man, that's some trippy stuff right there.
All right, cool.
Well, I was going to say, right, to make it put into perspective, when you see a piece of paper and you write on the piece of paper, that's 2 dimensions, right? But you can see every aspect of what's on the paper. You can see every angle of it, and that's the same if we were looking in the 3rd dimension. So that's my perception of what possibly the afterlife could be. That we're into a different dimension and we can perceive things more. Like there could be whatever creatures around us that we cannot comprehend because we're looking in 2D.
And multi-dimensions kind of proves that there can be angels and jinn, right?
Yeah.
Because we just can't see them because they're in a higher dimension.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's some weird stuff right there that I did not know.